An interesting piece of news on the eve of F1 pre-season kicking off was that we found out a bit about Ferrari's finances, namely that they're going to have a bigger budget for this year as that chase for an elusive Formula One World Championship continues. I've got Scott, Mitchell and Edd Straw here with me to discuss Ferrari, their finances and their potential Formula One future. And Scott, we're going to start with you because you've been trying to dig behind what's going on with Ferrari's budget. And what else did we learn? Because obviously the top line that we took from it was perhaps, more budget for 2019, but you found out quite a lot actually about the way Ferrari funds its racing effectively.
Yeah, it's quite difficult to really get into the nitty-gritty of Ferrari's finances because it's not like when you're a UK listed company and all of your accounts go on Companies House and it's accessible to everybody. But since they've been listed on the New York Stock Exchange, they have these investors calls, they have an annual financial report, and they have quarterly updates, so you can get a bit of a feeling for it. The other thing that makes it difficult is that the F1 operation, team and engine and everything else, it all comes under the big Ferrari company, so there's no specific breakdown, so you have to look for the finer print basically, so references, sort of more vague references to things like the majority of the R&D work is for the F1 team, and they describe things as significant expenses and stuff like that. So you have to look at sort of much bigger totals, make a little bit of an educated guess as to what the actual breakdown of that is. But they do get specific, for example, referencing that the majority of a €5 million decrease in R&D last year was predominantly to save money on the F1 side. But that's obviously a U-turn now. Now they're putting money back into the pot, probably because they lost to Mercedes again last season. It's more than a decade now since they last won a championship, so they have to respond to that. And I guess a bit more financial firepower in a budget that was already pretty damn big is a good way to go about that.
Well, that's one of the key things, isn't it? Ferrari weren't exactly tight with the purse strings up to now. Ed, we often hear from Ferrari quit threats. Aside from the odd race back in the day, they never follow through on these so far, so it seems a bit of a bargaining chip. How important really is F1 to Ferrari? I mean, one of the things that Scott and I were discussing before we started filming was the fact that really Ferrari doesn't do any marketing spend because it almost views F1 as its marketing spend. Is that why it's so important? Is that why Ferrari has been effectively an ever-present in F1?
Oh, very much so. Whenever these quit threats happen, which have been quite frequent over the decades, there's always that fear because Ferrari is very important to Formula One. Of course it is. It's been there since almost the very start of the World Championship. It is the most famous team, the most famous brand, and it adds a lot to F1. But as you say, Ferrari has been addicted to Formula One, if you like, for a very good reason. It's key to its promotion. It's key to its marketing. Racing is at the heart of what Enzo Ferrari first created, but that's also been integral to the image of the road cars. So this commitment shows that it's not just important for them to be in F1 and be at the front, it's important for them to be winning championships. Sure, Ferrari can go for a long time without winning championships, without losing any of their lustre, but they do need to actually win things. And I think this reflects the fact they think, actually, we're very, very close here. So let's just make sure we put in a little bit more just to make sure we get it over the line.
When so much budget is put into the F1 operation, that's the key. It's a period of a sustained period without major success. Wins are fine, but there hasn't been a championship in so long. That's when it becomes it takes a hit. The Ferrari brand takes a hit. The return on investment takes a hit. So the value of the company takes a hit as well, and they've got investors to answer for now. This is why what Ed was saying about how important it is on the marketing side, it means that Ferrari can afford to effectively shun traditional, very costly advertising methods. They don't need to. The brand speaks for itself effectively. But F1 is an absolutely core part of that. And they win, as I said, wins are good, but they now need to get back to the point where they're fighting or winning championships on a more regular basis to justify it all.
And we should say that if you're spending, probably more than $400 million a year on doing it, putting in a small extra amount on top of that is not exactly ridiculous, is it? It's just that you're going to spend 99% of what you need to spend. Why not just chuck in a little bit more just to make sure you achieve?
And is there something in common with what we've heard from Red Bull here, Scott? Because there was a bit of talk about future rules changes and maybe even the rule changes for 2019 almost forcing Ferrari to spend more money. We've heard that from Red Bull as well. So was that a kind of theme that you picked up in the numbers that you saw?
Yeah, so when the conference call happened with the investors, Louis Camilleri, the Ferrari CEO, told them that this budget increase was in line with their expectations, so their targets for 2019, it was to achieve that, but it was also with an eye on the 2021 changes. And we know that there's not a specific framework. So what they've basically said is, okay, we need to react to the changes that have happened for this year, because that's what he said. The rule changes for 2019 are to do with 2021. So basically what Ferrari's doing is you need to make the most of the 2019 changes, need to react to that because it's an expense anyway. So to get the most out of them, you obviously need to spend quite a lot of money. Helmut Marko says Red Bull spent 15 million euros on that. So that requires you either take not an insignificant chunk out of your existing budget, or you put a bit more in to cover that. But also, if these regulations form a key part of 2021, which Camilleri says Ferrari needs to have a crucial eye on, then you need to get these regulations right. Otherwise, anyone that steals a march now could have an advantage that carries on into 2020 and then into 2021 after that. So Ferrari's basically said, okay, we need to cover all bases now. We need to cover the fact that we want success in 2019. We need to react to the rules changes for 2019, but we also need to have an eye on the big regulation changes coming in 2021 as well.
And this actually is a big shift, because remember, Ferrari got the 2014 engine regulations wrong because they started on it too late. Mercedes, I think they had the first single-cylinder test project going on in 2010, and that was before the rules were even set. It was going to be a 4-cylinder engine at that time. So the benefit, even when you don't know exactly what the rules are, of investing early on are huge, and that's a good sign for Ferrari that a few years ago they were really short term, but now they're willing to think, actually 2021, that's important. Let's make sure we've got a little bit going on to give ourselves a rolling start.
Another piece of news we've had recently regards Ferrari's second team. Sauber has been renamed Alfa Romeo Racing. Is this a sign actually that Ferrari is more committed than ever to Formula One? It now effectively has two teams. Or is this perhaps, looking at 2021, is this a bargaining chip in terms of making sure Ferrari gets what it wants, perhaps with the rules and also contractually, to say, look, we've got two teams we can pull out of F1 now. If anything, have we just doubled up what the next quit threat's going to be?
I think it does give them more. It gives them more like bargaining power, but purely because now they basically will have a second vote on anything. They know that they've got at least one team in their corner, and probably the Haas customer team as well, which obviously has a very close relationship with Ferrari on the parts supply side. So I think practically, in terms of discussions, negotiations, it means that Ferrari will go into everything with two, if not three teams with that position. It's not just Ferrari on its own. But I think fundamentally beyond that, as we discussed, F1 is so vital to Ferrari. Ferrari talks in a way that a sustained period without success is detrimental to the brand's value. So you imagine what not being in F1 at all would be to the brand's value. So I think it's important, because we're in this really crucial phase of negotiations now for 2021, what they do and don't want the rules to be. So they've got more strength on that side. But in terms of improving their chances of actually quitting, I'm not sure that's the case.
Ed, should we just look at this? You've always been quite interested, I think, in Sauber. You're always the man who's got some sort of information or facts to tell us about Sauber. Do we just look at this as something positive for Sauber, that they are effectively becoming even closer towards effectively being a manufacturer team? Are we being cynical, and is this just good news for F1?
We have to be positive about it, because Sauber's a team that's gone through some tough times over the years. Even long time before the BMW days, there was always criticism of its lack of ambition, but it was just realistic. They knew they had to be kind of a good midfield team until something came along. Had the BMW glory years, BMW went, had some increasingly tough times, in fact, before it was saved. So of course it's positive. There's a great facility there, really high quality wind tunnel. That team's been pared back, but the Alfa Romeo thing, it means there's more money in there. It means a greater budget, more ambition for the team. So, of course, it's positive. And I think we know this. We know there's great reader interest in manufacturers. Sauber's a great racing name. We all respect it well. But Alfa Romeo means something to more people. So I think saying to people, there's an Alfa Romeo works team on the grid, which is effectively how everyone will see it, even though it is still at heart Sauber, is a great positive thing for F1. And it shows that manufacturers are willing to get involved. I think what it shows is that maybe manufacturers are keen to get involved in perhaps different ways to the have your own massive startup team.
It's almost branding rather than technology.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. And last time Alfa Romeo was with the Euro Racing team. It wasn't kind of run out of the Alfa factory. That's the thing. These have always been separate, kind of related entities, if you like. So the idea of a works and factory team has always been a little bit nebulous. Even the Mercedes team as is at Brackley. Yes, it's all Mercedes, but it all started as Tyrrell way back, and then BAR, and then Honda. So it's been lots of different things. This is the nature of it, and I think it's really positive. Alfa Romeo is a great name. They won the first World Championship back in 1950 with Giuseppe Farina, and it's going to be great. So if you're going to get good results for an Alfa Romeo, positive for everyone.